Hello and welcome back to the Artisfy Codecast. Today I'm going to be talking through some concepts that I've been mulling over in my head, and I think I've got the libraries down to a point where I'm understanding how they're going to interact a little bit better. So let's go through some of the ideas. So last video was a pretty short video. I talked about moving some of the data O attributes to the component level, which I think just makes sense in general as a best practice. To make the data L attributes not work with output.js, just input.js, and then to create a new attribute, data-w, that will watch a key name and call a custom function when that key name is edited. Okay, so how about instead of data-l and data-w being separate, what if it was just together? So instead we have a data-w attribute on an element, and then we have a data-w key, and we'll call this key whatever we want. It could be like book title. And we'll make it the Jungle Book. Okay, and then we'll close this div like this, and oh wait, so this is book title. Oh, sorry, this is not going to be set to anything. This is this is saying which key we're watching. So we're watching the book title key, and then when that changes, we want to call a custom function. So let's put custom function in here, and then we can put like a selector here. So the idea would be the first argument is the custom function. The second argument is any argument that we want to pass in to this custom function. So for example, we could have this be value, and then this would be a selector, and then what this would be doing is setting the value on this input element, or sorry, no. So yeah, so just like this. It would be setting the value on this input element, and then if we had something like this, like a div that wrapped an input, so we can do type text. In that case, we could have this be like input or like class, I don't know, we'll say like book title input, and then we'd have like this as the selector. So the idea would be that this function inside of the data-w key is called whenever this key changes, and it gets passed. So this function would get passed 3 arguments: 1, the current element; 2, the new value; and 3, any arguments that are specified here. And so that would allow me to, look up get this element, do a query selector on it to get, this element inside of it, and then set the value equal to whatever the new value of this is. Okay, so that would let us replace all of the data L attributes with data W attributes. Now, why do we need this other thing here? Well, that's to make these all easy to select, because what I'm thinking also is that if we go into our revisions example and we have data W key count and we pluralize this, um, depending on what the count is set to, right? So if the count is 1, we want this to say revision. If the count is 2, we want this to say revisions, right? And if the hours is, yeah, so this wouldn't be set to 2. This would be set to like format hours, because that's a function, right? So if the hours is set to like 0.5, then we would want this to say 30 minutes. Now the problem with this, which I was just thinking over, is that if we're laying all of this out in Pug, right, on the back end, we don't want to have to calculate like this twice, right? We already have a function here, format hours, that's going to be able to calculate this inner text from the value, right, from the 0.5. So we don't want to have like a back-end function, although we could, right? We could have this function be on the back end too. But I think um, from my perspective, let's not do that. Let's just set it once, and then let's do it on the front end. And so we would set it up here. We wouldn't have anything inside of this value. We wouldn't have anything inside of here. And what we would say is, what we would just say this, right? And then, uh, when this code initialized, we would have a function that went through all the elements with a data W on it. So this makes them easy to select, right? Because if we're just looking for these, we're going to have to go through every attribute on every element in order to find the ones that start with data-w dash. But if we just have data-w, or we could even call these like data-watch, yeah. So we could call it data-watch or data-w. I think data-w is fine. And then here, this would be the same, right? And we would do key count, and then we would say inner text, and we wouldn't specify an argument for that because the default is just to set it on the current element. Right, so then we wouldn't need anything here either. So this is just going to set the count here. It's going to set the revisions here, and then it's going to set the hours text here. So the problem with this, so there's two problems with this. So let's go back to our brainstorm, and let's make this a proposal. So we'll say, so first I'm going to have like the cons here. So the con number one, before I write out the proposal, just because I have the cons fresh in my head. I don't know how to do this anymore. Now that I have this like automatic thing that doesn't let me, I don't know, it like auto formats the equal signs, but it's annoying because I can't underline anything that way anymore. That's fine, I guess, with dashes. Okay, so the cons are we're building a front-end framework. And two, it's not obvious what the custom functions are going to do. Okay. So we're going to say replace data-w-l attributes with the catch-all data-w attributes and allow passing in and allow passing in additional arguments into the data-w functions, and this is the big one, don't set the value, don't format or don't output a value for most of the elements with data-w attributes because they're responsible for setting their own value. Okay, so yeah, so there's a few questions here. So I do like that this simplifies this, right? So now we don't have the data-l, the location keys anymore. They're all just data-w keys. That makes sense, I think, to unify those if, if we're going to have the watchers anyways, that's basically what data-l are doing now, because if they're not going to work with the output.js. So I do like that if we go down this direction. But can I just look at the bundles real quick? Is there a way? So let's actually go into our server. Oh man, hope I didn't. No, I don't have anything sensitive there. Oh man, why did I? Okay, I don't think I had anything sensitive there too. Okay, so we're going to GitHub. We're going to Artisfy to real app. We're gonna do npm run dev, and then we got localhost 777 bundles. Okay, so is there a way that I can rewrite this so that it's just going to use the pure data? Well, what I could do is I could say let's delete this, and let's say major revisions 1. And then in here, let's delete this, and let's delete this, and let's say in parentheses each 2 hours. And we'll put a space in here. So if we did this, I know it doesn't look great, but let's just pretend that it does. Because I just want to kind of think about how it would work. Like, would this actually work, right? Like, would this be easier, right? So this one could be in its own element pretty easily. And if it was like, it kind of makes sense, right? Major revisions 1. It doesn't read well, but it kind of makes sense. And if it's like, 5, that makes just as much sense, right? When it's formatted this way. So it kind of doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be pluralized, right? So that's what we're trying to do here. What's in the page is the data that's going to be exported, so that we don't have to run in any of these special watch functions. Okay, now the next one is each 2 hours. So this wouldn't allow us to do each, you know, I guess we could do each 0.5 hours. But I think it's hard to expect someone to see that the point is there. So I would want to convert this into minutes. So I think what I would do is I would not, I don't know. I mean, I think already this kind of, yeah, I might like set the smallest amount to be like 1 hour, and then just like encourage people to put like hours in there instead of minutes. And then like if they want to put like 1.5, that's fine, right? Because that, that kind of makes sense. But yeah, it's not great. Okay, so, okay. Major revisions. I mean, I don't like it. I think it would have to be redesigned a little bit in order for it to work with the pure data. Um, and I do like this better, how this is set up, how this reads, you know? Um, Although I think I can get rid of the up to. I think I could just say like each 30 minutes of extra work, right? The up to doesn't really matter there. And it just kind of pushes it to the next line. So that's not great. Okay, so if I do that, if I want to actually format the text, then I'm going to have to do all this stuff. But the downside is we're building a front-end framework at this point. It's not, so I do want to give the pros though. So like, why are we not building a front-end framework? Well, the nice thing about this library is that we're rendering everything on the back end. I mean, I guess right now we're not, right? Because with this example, like I would actually want to write some documentation here, right? So I would want to say, I don't know, how the heck do you do comments in Pug? It's so, okay, I don't know. There, it's fine, but just how do you do it? Is it a, you can't do it on the same line, I guess? Well, okay, let's try it like here. So if I do like that, what happens? Yeah, it's gonna output it. Okay, so you can't put a comment on the same line. That's annoying. Plug, comment, same line. Let's just say like plug comments and then Stack Overflow. Comments. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So yeah, I think we need to, yeah, have them on a different line. So I think um, what I would do is I would say like, I think it's like that. Okay, so I would say like two, I don't know, maybe like EG, for example, two. And then after this one, I would have like EG revisions. And then for this one, I would have like EG 2 hours, 40 minutes. Um, I think that's fine. It's not great to use comments in place of like, you know, good code. But I'm not sure what else to do here. I mean, other than actually switch to a front-end framework like, you know, Vue.js or React.js, which would honestly at this point make this part of the code a lot easier. Um, why am I writing this framework? Well, it's going to live on top of server rendered code. And the idea is that I'm going to have less to think about, less to keep up with, and I can work directly with the DOM. That's like a huge advantage of what I'm doing right now because everything is in the DOM. The data is in the DOM, everything's in the DOM. So I, I, I can still work with the DOM. I still have direct access to the DOM. Whereas with Vue.js, I think there's always this, yeah, I mean, you don't want to work with the DOM directly. You want to, if you can, use Vue.js to maneuver your way into a DOM structure that you like, right? From the data, using the data. And this is tagging on the data on top of the DOM, and then like the data adds some like extra stuff that's like, you know, interesting, but the DOM is still the DOM. But yeah, now we're getting a little away from that with these like custom generated outputs, right? Where like, yeah, this is no longer, it's no longer just in the DOM, right? This like this is a full component, right? This is a full component, full custom component that is doing its own thing, right? It's like it's multiple switches, copying the position of another element. Um, what is this? Data copy position. Oh, this is the old syntax. Why is that? I guess I didn't change that yet. That's weird. Yeah. Huh. Data. Oh, I think what happened is I just didn't delete this. Because I think if I search for this, it's not going to come up. Yeah. Um, so I think I can just remove these. Okay. So, yeah. Um, I don't know. Yeah, it's like it's its own kind of component. It's got a lot of behavior attached to it. Um, I like it though. It makes sense to me. I guess it's starting to make a little less sense to me. Like I mean, I guess I can read this pretty well, right? Like if I go in here and I say, okay, this is watching the count, right? And then it's going to set it on the inner text. So this is just going to be equal to what's up here, right? Easy. This one's watching the count, and it's going to uh, pluralize. Um, I could even say like word, and then I could say like revisions, right? Because this is the second argument. Um, so that's pretty clear. So I could get rid of this, right? Because all this is doing is like, I think I could call this like set inner text, right? Um, and then like pluralize word. I don't know. I like just having this be inner text. That's pluralize word. So it's obvious what it's doing. It's pluralizing revision depending on the count. And then uh, format hours. Um, I don't know. I could do something like this, where I do like H and then like hours and then like comma, and I could put this in like single quotes, and then I could say like, you know, minutes and minutes, kind of like a template string, and then I could use this to like format what's gonna output here so that it's obvious. Um, you know, so like now I can delete this, right? Because if I just look at this, I'm gonna say like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna use this as a template. What's gonna output here is like each up to, and then it's gonna say like 2 hours, you know, 30 minutes, and then it's gonna say of extra work, right? So yeah, um, that would work. I guess that requires all of these functions to be like as explicit as possible, which, you know, is a good thing. Um, but like, do I want to support having like a template string passed in here? I guess what I would have to do, I have to, for these watch things, I would have to, what, like split on the, um, I think I'd have to like find the first space and then split there. And then like the first part is the function and the second part is the argument. You know, like if I'm going to pass in an argument that can be this complicated, then you know, I'm going to have to support that, and then I'm going to have to like in my format hours function parse this, which, you know, I mean, I'm going to have to like yeah, I mean, I guess I could just look for this string, right, directly, right? Because that's the only one I'm going to be formatting as. So I could, yeah, I could just look for like, does it match this? Okay, then just do that. And that's pretty simple, right? So that's not hard. So I wouldn't actually have to work with this string at all. I would just have to be like, is this the one you're looking for? Um, Yeah, I mean, I actually wouldn't even have to look for the string. I could just like default format hours to outputting something in this format, but like this, I could just use this as like a placeholder that's just like letting me know what the type of data is going to be output. That's kind of uh, cheesy, but it could work. Uh, yeah. So I mean, I like that. And then, yeah, so I mean, it would just require the the key count, the data watch key to be formatted so that the first part. So let me. me grab this string and just see how I would do that really quick, because this is kind of fun. So we'd have this, why does that look, oh, okay, because I didn't press enter. Okay, so we'd have this string, and we don't have a find. We have an index of. So we would say index of space, and then let's assign that to I, and then we would say do we have a JS split string at index? Okay, so substring, I always forget what the difference is. Okay, so the second argument to substring is the index to stop at, but the second argument to substring is the maximum length to return. Okay, so most of the time we want the full substring. Okay, so let's do a substring, and this is cool because then, yeah, this is nice. The console's gotten much better recently. So we're going to start at 0, and we're going to end at I. Okay, and then the next one is we're going to do it again. Oh, geez, substring. Okay, and then we're going to start at, it's going to be I plus 1, I believe. And then for the end, we're not going to give it. Okay. So then we'll get that back. So that works, right? That's not too hard. So we have the string, we get the index of the first space, we use that index to get the first part, which is the function to be called. So, you know, we'll have like an object with all the functions on it, object with funcs, and then we'll call, you know, this on that. Of course, it won't exist right now, but oh yeah, and we would have to call it, so we would do something like that. But that doesn't exist right now. So yeah, that's not too hard. This, then that. I don't know why I'm doing this all all over again. But then that, and then that. Yeah, not too bad. Okay, so that could work. And this does give me like a pretty good idea without the comments of like what's happening. And then, oh yeah, so then, yeah, so the idea is that we're not setting any of the data W values, and then we're, you know, in our input.js, so if we go in here and we have this init function, we're also going to call like, I don't know, it would be called like, I don't know, fill watch data elements. I don't know, something like that. Fill watcher elements with data. Something, I don't know. It's a weird thing, but something like that. So I think I'm a little bit too tired right now to actually program this, but it's just been floating around in my mind, and I just wanted to talk through it. So yeah, we're going to move the data O attribute, the data output attributes to the top level component. So that'll allow us to style certain things. So yeah, let's see with the revisions example what that would let us do. So now if we so we said with the count changed, we would want to do a couple of things here. So we would want to hide this element, find the closest details section, and add a class to that element. Um, so, I mean, if we wouldn't actually need to do all of that. We could just do the latter part of it because where was I? Here. Okay, so like we could just find the closest thing and then add the class to it because hiding the element could just be done with, CSS, right? So in our CSS, why isn't that working? Okay, so yeah, in our CSS we could have an attribute that selects for like this and that equal to 0, and then below that we could just say like display none, right? Um, okay, so I guess what if we wanted to get rid of the other thing where we have to attach the class? Is there something we could do for that? Can we have like a like add class one? So we could um, so we have this one which displays none, so we don't need to do anything with that. So what if we had like count uh, we'll say like add class and we'll say like um geez, this is awful. I don't think I want to do this, but let's just experiment. So it'd be like that, and then it would be like yeah, yeah. I don't know what to say here. Um, closest, closest, and then like this. Ay, ay, ay. That's awful. So it would add class would take a few arguments. No, this is awful. Awful, awful, awful. Okay, so like what is another? What's another way we could do this? So basically, the only reason we want to do this, okay, so what I think we could do is have something that um, copies the attribute value. So you know what I really wish we could do is just put all of this up here, right? Because that would solve a lot of problems. It would cause a couple problems because if we go down to our inline edit, we are um, when we're syncing, we sync the count and we sync the hours, and it's just like boom, smooth, awesome. We don't need to worry about anything else. Um, but well, if we replace these, so again, just brainstorming, but like if we replace these with data dash watch attributes, and so this is like key count, and this would be like major major revisions count, and then we would say like value, and then this is minor revisions count, and we would say value, and then if the data that it's trying to sync with isn't found here, then um, so like if we're trying to edit the minor revisions, then this one's not going to be found, so it's not going to even call this function, right? To sync it with that, it's only going to call this one. So then that's perfect, right? So that would work. So it either set one or the other. Now the problem with this that I just thought about, so that's perfect. That's awesome if we could get this to work like that, and then I can move all of the data up to the other area, right? So this would solve some problems. The issue is that right now I was using this to sync the data back, but now there's no way to have something here create, yeah, so like this this not this sorry, this not working with the output library is a problem. The location key not working with the, I mean, especially if we change it, right? So if we change it to, yeah, okay, that doesn't work. Okay, so if, I guess I'll just like, you're commented out. Okay, so if we change it to this, how is this, first of all, how is it going to know which one to sync with, right? It's not, there's no way to know. So that's a problem. And then the other problem is that uh, even if it did know which one to sync with, why should it sync with this? This is not necessarily outputting data. This is only reacting to change data. So I think what I would have to do is I'd have to go back to having the data I attributes, which is, you know, not terrible, but not ideal either, because right now, the way I'm doing it, all I have to do is like run the parse data function over all of this, and it gets all the data for me and syncs it back with, you know, the original data. So I like that. Here, one second. I'm just gonna pause real quick. Yeah, so like I'm just parsing the data, so I don't really yeah, this isn't an ideal way to do this. Yeah, now I'm kind of missing the location key. I kind of like the location key makes a lot more sense now. And it makes the data library very flexible. So I think right now I'm kind of at this decision point, right? Uh, where I do want that flexible data library that's able to work with this data as well as the other data. And I'm kind of getting tired of these watch attributes. I don't want them anymore. Uh, but it's nice to have them like here, right? Because then they're gonna take care of a lot of problems for like setting the data here. So I think either I'm at a crossroads and I need to choose one path or the other, or I need to brainstorm a way out of this. That's going to give me the best of both worlds. And I think, um, so I think first of all, it's not the worst thing, just a thought, but it's not the worst thing if I have separate editing forms for the major revisions and the minor revisions, even though they're very similar. I mean, they're identical, right? I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world. But let's go back to the reason why I wanted to do that. The reason why I wanted to do that is I wanted to put all the data on the top level because I wanted the component to be able to control the visibility of everything inside of it, and that requires um, having the data all the way up there. Um, so I could have like another option for this is to have like set temp data on closest, and then I could pass in this. And what this would do is, so it's watching for the count key to change, and then it's grabbing the closest one of these, and it's setting the count data as temp data. So what that would do is create like a data T key, right? And with the same name, and it would be set to whatever the count is at the time, right? So if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, that's a pretty elegant solution. Um, yeah, I kind of like that, right? I mean, it's pretty elegant. And so these temp keys, they're not actually doing anything except for, you know, like I would use it to control the visibility on this, inside of this, right? Uh, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I like it. It's pretty good. So so let's go back to the other problem. So I like that. I'm kind of coming back around to the watch keys, but here there's a problem. How do I get how do I get the value out of this input? Is there any way to get that out of this input using these watch keys? Well, I have some news for you. Um, we just invented this function over here, set temp data uh, on closest. Well, we could also do, so what is this? Major revisions count value. Okay, so whenever the data is changed okay, so now we would have, oh no, 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 no. Because these, okay, so not with the watch keys, because the watch keys are all about watching for synchronized data being synchronized to this element, but they're not about getting the data out of this element. So in order to get the data out of this element, we would need our location keys back. Which I'm not opposed to. So the nice thing, the elegant thing about the location keys is they control how the data is being gotten out of them and how it's being set in them. Whereas the watch keys are just about how to set the data in them. It's not about getting the data out at all. They're more like general purpose. So I guess the question is, do I like the location keys even when I have these watch keys? So the nice thing about not having the location keys is that the library is slightly more efficient. I no longer have to go inside of the inner text, for example, in order to get the data. The data is always going to be set on the component, right? That would be the idea. And then the watch key would set. So, oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. So I know how to do it. So we would have these watch keys here, right? And we wouldn't have to set the data on the highest level component because we'd have this. So we would just have count here, okay? So let's keep that simple. Then, so we have the count there. Now the issue is, how do we get the data, right? And so the idea would be, geez. So we would have a data watch. So we would be watching the count key, and then we would also be watching the count key again, and we would say set data on closest. No, because this would be, instead, this would be an input key, an input element. Okay. And then we would say for input, okay. So I don't know, it'd be something like this. Data, so where are all of our lists? Sync, save, key, and value. So let's just let's just remove this. So we'd have like data input, and we would say set data on closest, and we would give it the sure, the data syncer. And then for the second argument, we would give it the key name, I guess, that we wanted to set. So in this case, it would be count. And if it was like, I don't know, bundle name, it would be like bundle name, right? So set data on closest would get the current element, and then it would get the current element, the current value of the element, because this is a data I attribute. So that would automatically do that for inputs that it's attached to. So it would get the current element, it would get the value of the current element, and then it would get this argument, and then it would get this argument. And so the third argument it would use to go up to this, and then the fourth argument it would say, okay, I'm going to set the data O key bundle name equal to whatever value is in there, right? So that would be one way of doing it. Yeah. So I like it, but there's another problem that I just want to address, which is okay. So a con data O attributes that come from text areas are susceptible to being very, very long. So yeah, basically if we're like, setting a description and we're saying, the all of the data O attributes are going to hold their total value, that's a problem when we get to that, right? Because if the data location keys aren't working anymore, uh, yeah, if the data location keys aren't working anymore, that means that the data is going to have to be in the output attributes in its complete form. I don't like that. So, okay. So here are my feelings about everything so far. So let's say one, um, okay. In general, data O dash star attributes should be on at the top level, as close to the top level, as close to the top level of the component as makes sense. Okay. Uh, However, um, data L attributes are an exception and should be, and should be on the element and should normally be on the element with the value they need. I guess that's not necessarily true because we do have the ability to give them a selector. So let's just say it's okay if data L attributes are on the element that contains their value. But it's encouraged to pass them a selector so they can get the value from there instead. It's not ideal, but I think from in terms of like if I'm reading, I guess, so if I'm reading through this code like I'm not going to have to deal with this, right? I mean, it's only if I'm reading the actual source code of the site after someone's edited it that this is going to be a big deal. Um, like, because when I'm writing it, I guess when I have the description up here, right? Description. So like, or the deliverable, right? This is a better example because it's longer. So if I have to put this inside of like another key up here, that does make it a little bit harder for me. I would rather just see this and like have this be in its normal place. Um, okay, so I think that's fine, even though it's not performant. I'm just a little worried about going into all these, like, I mean, basically the location attributes require the computer, the browser, to parse the attribute, um, do a possible query selector on the current element to find the new element, and then grab the value or the inner text of that element. Now, I don't think those are huge, heavy operations, and they're probably not going to add a ton of time. But when you're talking about doing this to potentially, hundreds or thousands of elements on a page, when you're compiling all the data together, I think it does become a little bit heavy. So is it really worth the trade-off of not having to have this inside of an attribute, right? Well, the benefit of not having it to be inside the attribute. So one is that like this is much different than, I mean, it's not that much different. Okay, I mean, whatever. We'll skip that point. Okay, so like, let's assume I know this is going to end up, in here, right? Because I understand the library I wrote. Okay. Um, so the downside is that this is going to be so on the initial page load, I'm going to have a bunch of uh, data dash w uh, calls, right? And they're going to go through all the data dash w elements on the page, of which this is going to be one, and it's going to copy the attribute text into the DOM node. And that's that's not good for a couple reasons. One, SEO, right? Because with search engines, you want the data to be on the page to start out with. Two, accessibility. It's really not good for accessibility. And three, performance. If it has to go through, say like 3 dozen of these, it's like the same performance concerns, right? Just on the other side. And this is worse because like this is like actually setting up the page for viewing. It's not editing the page. So I'd rather the performance downside be on the editing of the page. Okay, so I've decided, yes, I want where are our thoughts? Okay, in general, okay, it's okay if data L attributes. Okay, so let's put at the top here, we're keeping data L attributes. Okay, takeaways. I don't know. Okay, we'll do that. Takeaways. We're keeping data, okay. And then these are like the rules, I guess, or like guidelines. Guidelines. Okay. So the next thing is that we're implementing data W attributes, but not to replace data L attributes. Okay, so this is going to be a data L attribute. So we're not going to have this crazy thing, and we're not going to have this crazy thing. We're going to keep it simple, which I like, because I was really enjoying programming that way. Okay, and I can remove that. And I don't think there was anything else. Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, so we're keeping that, we're implementing the watch attributes, but not to replace the data L attributes. And then I think this is a good idea. The set temp data on closest. I like that. I like that. I like this syntax. This makes so much sense to me. I love it, honestly. It's so good. I love it. Okay. So yeah, and then we don't even have to do anything inside, like if this is setting the temp data on the closest element, right? This is going to be when this is 0, we can show shit. We can't. Because we're not going to know whether the count is for major revisions or minor revisions. So we'd have to give it like another argument. um, I don't know. uh, um, that's annoying. Is there a way to tell? Is there another way to tell that it's for major revisions? I guess this this thing here could check to see if this is a namespace, right? If there's like a data key on it, and then if there is, I don't know, it like automatically prepends this with the key. So it would be like major revisions, and this would happen automatically just because this has a key on it. Ugh, that's iffy. Um, I mean, yeah, we could just like pass in another argument here. It's not great, but we could just like pass in an argument that we want to like prepend this key with, right? So it would just be like major count, right? It's really not that good. That sucks. Um, the automatic namespacing thing, it's not the worst, but uh, it's not great either. Set temp data on closest. I don't know. I could see like set namespaced. How do I, what is namespace? Namespace. Okay, so it's one word. Set namespace temp data on closest, or namespaced. So, I mean, it's a really long function name, but it kind of makes sense, right? It's gonna see if this data is namespaced at all. It doesn't quite make sense, but it'll do, right? So then we would have this major revisions key count, and we'd have the other one too, right? So we'd have one for minor. It's not great, but it's it's elegant in a way. So we'll do that, and then this stuff is great. I love that. Um, what other stuff were we thinking about? Moving the data O attributes to the top level component as a best practice. Yeah, so it can control the styling of its elements. Yeah, so we already dealt with that one. In general, they should be as close to the top level component as makes sense. Uh, but, obviously not overlap with each other. Yeah, I mean, it's a little confusing now. I mean, it's a little not confusing, but it's like a little troubling right now how closely I'm trying to like fit this library to a purpose. Like with these like inline edit pop-ups and stuff, like that's not every application is going to have that, right? So it feels weird that I'm making this data sync stuff work just with that. And then I feel like there's some other stuff where it's a little weird. But I don't know. Maybe it'll eventually adapt into a more general purpose thing as I work on more general purpose code. Okay, so this makes sense. Uh, so data L attributes are going to work. So data dash L dash star attributes will work with output JS as well as input JS. Okay, and then the third one, creating a new attribute will match a key name and call a custom function. Yeah. Okay. Yep. I like it. Uh, data dash w dash star attributes are a pretty great idea. Okay, and then 4 is replace data L location attributes with the catch-all data W at data watch attributes, allowing passing in additional arguments into the data watch functions and don't output a value for most of the elements, for most of the watch attributes because they're responsible for setting their own value. And don't, I don't know, write a value in the pug template for most of the elements with data. Yeah. Okay. Um, uh, um, both whenever a data sync occurs as well as when the page loads. Okay, so yeah, that's a minor problem. As far as like, okay, so like, say, I don't know, say Google cares about this site and they're like, hey, like, we're gonna parse out, how many revisions this stuff has, this project has. They, I mean, they do run JavaScript, so it's probably fine. But the idea that this doesn't output 2 until the JavaScript runs. This doesn't output revisions until the JavaScript runs, and this doesn't output the number of hours and minutes until the JavaScript runs. It's kind of annoying. I mean, I guess, I could, like I said before, have a function that, on the server that, pluralizes the word revision, right? And so I could do both, right? I could do one on the front end, one on the back end. But I think for now, it's fine if it's just computing this stuff on the front end. So let's see. I don't know. I feel a little bit weird about this, but let's say data w star attributes are run on every data sync with their component or to their component, and on initial page load, so they can set their element, and on initial, so they can set up. What does it say? So they can set up. Yeah, okay, so yeah, I like that. So I was thinking just about the data t values, and I was like, oh, what if those are saved to the server? But they won't be. They're not going to be. They're not anything. They don't mean anything. They're just temporary attributes. So that's fine. This is such a weird name. Uh, yeah. It's too complicated for what it does. It's too complicated of a name. Set namespace temp data uncloses. I don't know. It feels a little weird, but I think it's fine. It's fine. It's fine for now. Yeah. I wish it could just be set temp data uncloses, but it can't be. Um, I don't know. How do I feel about this in general? I kind of wish I could go back to not having these watch functions or these watch attributes because they're going to get complicated. They do help me compartmentalize the code. So like right now, if you look at the revisions code, it's too complicated. Is this it? No, this is the inline edit section. So here, right where I'm like setting stuff on the classes and stuff, like where is it? It's here. Yeah, all this stuff, all this code for just like setting hours and minutes and the like whether revisions is plural or not. I mean, this isn't a lot of code, right? But it's a lot of code to pluralize a word. And then, this isn't a ton of code, but it's a lot of code just to say, like 2 hours and 20 minutes, you know? Yeah. And then here I'm saying if there are no hours and no minutes, then don't display the hours altogether. That kind of seems silly. But yeah, I guess it makes sense. I don't know. Yeah, so I mean, this is, it's not going to be that much simpler when I change it to like format hours, right? I guess it is, so we'll get the element automatically, right? So I won't have to do this query selector. I'll still have to do the parse float. I'll still have to get the minutes. I'll still have to get the hours. I'll still have to get this. I'll still have to like assemble the time string. using this stuff. And then I guess I'll just be able to call like this, right? And I guess I don't even really need this code. I don't know. It could. Well, yeah, no, I guess I wouldn't need that code because I could just use, I'll have the hours up here. So I'll just be able to say like, if it's 0, don't show this section, right? So I can do that in the CSS. So that, yeah, that works. It's, yeah, and like I mean, I could use like some kind of time library, right, to do that instead. It's not like it's not the end of the world. I mean, like a time library, or just like have the function be separate, right? Like it doesn't have to be all right here, right? It could just be like, like this this part of it, right there, is like it should be in a separate module. That's just like it takes some a float of the hours and then turns it into like a string display, a time string, yeah, or whatever. So yeah, that should be in a separate module. So it's actually not that much code if you split it out into a module. Okay, so what are the major downsides to this? Not a ton. I'm still worried about the performance a little bit. So I guess, yeah, let me just write down like some concerns. Performance of data L attributes having to use, having to potentially use a query selector as well as accessing inner text or value. Concerns about value could add up over time. SEO downsides of using JS in the custom functions in the data-w- star custom functions to set content, SEO, and accessibility downsides. Yeah. So I'm really not sure about accessibility. I think probably most browsers that like people are using, even if they're blind, they're going to parse JavaScript. So I'm not sure if that's something to worry about. I'm not sure. And then the reason I didn't want to use the watch attributes for setting the data, or I mean in the sorry, in the inline edit, is that um, is that if they replace the location keys, then we would have to store like large blocks of text. and then all of that data would be have to be set up on the initial load, and it could make the site take a performance hit on the initial load. But I am setting some of those things that aren't in the location values. So like this stuff, I am setting that stuff up on the initial load. So yeah, that's I don't know. I am not sure. Um, so how about we say like minor or like performance concerns about data-w-star attributes, setting a bunch of values, calculating a bunch of values on every page load. Yeah. Okay, so the other thing to do would be to go into what do we have working on? Our mockup. Yeah, okay. And changing the way that we're setting this data. Okay, so let's copy this, paste it here, and let's, oh man, did I lose it? Oh man, you motherfucker. Sorry. That's awful. Okay, what happened here? Okay, not super bad. Okay, everything else looks kind of okay. Okay, so, oh, not here. Whatever, I'm not gonna fix it all now. Okay, so if we go here, how do we redesign this so that it matches up with the data exactly? Well, we could make it so that it's only hours, right? And then here, okay. So basically, let's delete this for now, just to give us a little extra room. And let's ungroup this. And we've got 8 pixels. So we're going to say like that. Each 2 hours of extra work. And do like that. So yeah, we could just put like a like a parentheses s, that's like, or like we were saying before, I could say like major revisions 1. And then we could say like each. Oh, okay, 1 minor revision, which is 30 minutes of extra work. So then we have minor revision 1 each 1 hour of extra work. Okay, so like something like that, major revisions, minor revisions. Whew. It looks fine. It's not like terrible, right? And then, oh, so this would have to be like this. An hour. Each 2 hours. Yeah, that's not great. Yeah, that's not great. 2 hour. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of like how this looks. Oh, yeah, that's not gonna work. Yeah, yeah, and I like that it just changes. I think that's nice. I think that's fine. And, you know, so what if it has to like go through some JavaScript? It's, you know, it's probably not going to be that much that it's watching. And it's nice. I think it's nice to have it, to have the ability to do something like this. Definitely like that. Ideally, well, you know what we could do? We could use the same thing up here, and then we could just say, um, we could say like word, I don't know. We can do it like this for now. So it'd be like word revisions, and then, oops, and then we'd have word revision, and we would have revision and revisions, and then we would, if if this if this is, yeah, we could do it all in the CSS. And this we would set with the location key, right? Because we're back to that. And then this format hours. What I would love to do is transform transform the hours into the, yeah, no. I think this is the best I can do for this one. And I don't know, I don't like this one as much as what we had before. So let's put that back. I mean, it's decent, but it doesn't explain what's happening. Oh, but okay, here's the problem. So we have the count here, and then we're gonna have it here too. Oh, that's annoying. So it's not gonna know which one, like when we're outputting the data, it's not gonna know which one to trust. Um, and it's not gonna know which one to sync it with from the inline edit. So I don't know, I think it's just gonna sync it with both, right? Let's see, sync output data, matching elements. We loop through each of the matching elements. We check if it has the plane. So it can only be one or the other. But I mean, these aren't separate elements, so like we get lucky, I guess, and it gets set on both. And then when we're parsing, it doesn't matter because they're both equal to the same value. So it's fine. We just let it go. It's annoying. Jeez, that's annoying. This is complicated. Um, I think, I don't know, I just want to like make some decisions, you know? Uh, it's complicated because I want the, uh, so this is gonna watch. Yeah, okay. So the way to do it, I guess, is is to remove this here, right? Yeah, we're just gonna remove that. And it's annoying. It's annoying because, okay, now my data's scattered. I guess it's fine. Guess I'm gonna be okay with it. But so now I have data down here. Yeah, this is watching the count, so I'm already good with that, right? It's setting these temporary keys for the CSS. But it is a little bit all over the place, right? Because now, like, how does this data even look, right? It's a little complicated. Um, I guess what I do is I do this, details revision count text, and then I do this, do L count, and then count text. So now my data is all in one place. I can remove this, and it's going to sync. That's going to cause it to sync with that. So yeah. Yeah, okay. That works better. So now my data's all up here. It's setting these temporary keys up here, which is fine. Um, and it's watching for this stuff in order to do special stuff with it. And that's, according to our guidelines, right? Where we said, in general, these should all be as close to the top level component as makes sense, but obviously not overlap with each other. It's okay if, these location attributes are on the element that contains their value, but it's encouraged to pass them a selector. It's encouraged to, I think, put them on the top level component and then pass them a selector so they can get the value there uh, from a child element while keeping all the data attributes in one place. We'll say output. Okay. And then this I think was a really good decision because I really like how flexible the location attributes are. And then these are a good idea, I agree. And they should run every data sync and on the initial page load so that they can set up. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that works pretty well, and I feel good about that. I feel better about this than I do about like what I'm currently doing, right? Which is, I mean, I have this one after save function, and what it's just gonna like check to see if the class list contains this. It's a mess, right? It's it's gonna be too much code in one place, and even though I can like modularize it and whatever, it's it's not clean. Whereas this feels much cleaner. It's like, oh, I'm gonna run this function whenever this key changes. I can tell that right away, uh, and I can, by the function name, kind of tell what it's gonna do. So I feel pretty good about that. And then, this two and this two, those just kind of make sense. I am kind of building a front end library, like a front end framework at this point, but I haven't found anything that's this cool before, right? So, I mean, I have these location attributes. I love that. I love those location attributes. I love the watch attributes. I think Knockout.js does things that are kind of like this, but it's not, it's meant to work more with like live data. And I like that this is more like static. It's like this happens, and then you don't really have to worry about it, right? And it's just one thing at a time. I don't know. I think that's good. But we'll see. I'll try implementing it tomorrow and then we'll really know whether it works or not. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Thank you for tuning in. If you did, you probably didn't. It doesn't matter. Uh, this is pretty fun to work on, even if no one's watching. I will see you next time.